Harold Bennett noticed something strange the last time his children came for dinner. They asked about the house, but not about him. Not about the persistent cough that had been bothering him for weeks. Not about the slight tremor in his hands as he poured tea. Instead, their attention drifted toward the walls, the hardwood floors, and the antique chandelier hanging above the dining table. At 70, Harold was still a tall man, though age had curved his shoulders slightly forward. His thick silver hair was always neatly combed back, and he still wore pressed shirts even when no one was visiting. That evening, however, he felt smaller somehow, almost invisible in his own home. His eldest son, Daniel, broad-shouldered and sharply dressed in an expensive navy suit, walked slowly around the living room. His polished shoes echoed against the wooden floor. "This neighborhood has become premium," Daniel said casually, adjusting his watch. "Properties here are worth a fortune now." Across the room, his daughter Melissa, elegant, perfectly styled, her blonde hair falling neatly over a tailored coat, ran her fingers across the marble fireplace. "It's too much space for one person, Dad," she said gently. "You don't need all this anymore." The youngest, Ryan, lean and restless, scrolled through his phone at the dining table. "About updating your will, right?" he asked without looking up. "Just to keep things simple for everyone." Harold gave a slow nod, though no one met his eyes. He remembered building this house brick by brick with overtime hours and sleepless nights. He remembered their late mother painting those walls with laughter still alive in her voice. During dinner, the conversation circled around market trends, legal paperwork, and future planning. No one asked him how he spent his mornings. No one noticed the framed photograph of their mother that he had placed beside his plate. When the evening ended, Daniel lingered near the staircase. "Just think about it," he said quietly. "It's better to organize things while you're clear-minded." The pause before the last two words did not go unnoticed. After they left, Harold stood alone in the doorway, watching their cars disappear down the quiet street. The autumn wind brushed against his lined face, and for the first time, he felt a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. That night, he sat in his study, staring at the old mahogany desk where he once helped them with homework. Age reflected something new. Not anger, not sadness. Something steadier, a decision forming silently. He made an appointment with a lawyer. The lawyer's office smelled faintly of leather and old paper. Harold sat upright in the chair, his tall frame still commanding despite the slight bend in his back. Across from him sat Margaret Ellis, a sharp-eyed woman in her early 60s with short gray curls and rimless glasses. She studied him carefully before speaking. "Are you certain this is what you want, Mr. Bennett?" Harold adjusted the cuff of his crisp white shirt. His hands were steady now. He replied. His deep voice carried a calmness that surprised even him. "I want the house, the savings, and the investment account transferred to the Bright Horizons Children's Foundation." Margaret paused, pen hovering above the document. "Your children may contest this," she warned gently. "It's a significant change from your previous will." Her eyes searched his face for hesitation. She found none. Harold leaned back slightly, the leather chair creaking beneath him. "They've already divided it in their minds," he said quietly. "I simply decided not to participate in that version of my future." Bright Horizons had once helped him years ago, when Daniel had fallen seriously ill as a boy. The charity had covered medical expenses he could not afford at the time. He had never forgotten the strangers who showed up when hope felt thin. What struck him most now was the contrast. Strangers had helped without expectation. His own children now calculated what remained of him as if he were a balance sheet. That evening, Daniel called again. His voice was polished, confident as always. "Dad, I spoke to a property consultant. If we move quickly, we can maximize value before the market shifts." The word we sounded rehearsed. Harold listened quietly, his blue eyes fixed on the fading sunlight outside his study window. "Daniel," he said slowly, "have you ever wondered what I might want?" There was silence on the other end. 2 days later, Melissa arrived unannounced. Her heels clicked sharply against the marble floor as she stepped inside. "Dad, Ryan told me you've been meeting with a lawyer," she said, arms crossed. "Is there something we should know?" Harold looked at his daughter, the perfectly composed woman with her mother's eyes but none of her softness. For the first time, he did not offer reassurance. Instead, he simply replied, "Yes, there is." Harold invited all 3 of his children to the house the following Sunday. His silver hair was neatly combed, and he wore a charcoal gray suit he hadn't touched since his wife's funeral. He stood straight in the living room as Daniel, Melissa, and Ryan entered, each carrying suspicion in their eyes. Margaret Ellis sat calmly on the edge of the armchair, a slim leather folder resting on her lap. Daniel immediately noticed it. "Why is your lawyer here?" he asked, his voice tightening despite his controlled posture. Harold gestured for everyone to sit. The air felt heavy, thick with unspoken accusations. "I wanted you to hear this directly from me," he said, his deep voice steady but firm. Margaret opened the folder and began reading the revised will. The words sounded formal, almost cold, as they filled the once warm living room. When she reached the section about the estate, her tone did not change, but the atmosphere did. The property located at 14 Willow Creek Drive, along with all primary savings and investment accounts, shall be donated in full to the Bright Horizons Children's Foundation. For a moment, no one breathed. Melissa's face drained of color. Daniel shot up from the couch, his jaw clenched, expensive watch flashing under the light. "This is ridiculous," he snapped. "Dad, you're not thinking clearly. Who pressured you into this?" Ryan laughed nervously, running a hand through his dark hair. "This has to be a mistake. We're your family." The word family sounded fragile now, like it had conditions attached. Harold rose slowly from his chair. Despite his age, there was something powerful in the way he stood, tall, composed, unshaken. His blue eyes moved from one child to the next. "When I needed help years ago," he said quietly, "that charity stood beside me without asking for anything in return." He paused, letting the silence settle. "Recently, I realized something painful. Strangers once treated me with more concern than my own children do today. You discussed dividing this house while I was still sitting in it." No one argued after that. The anger in Daniel's face shifted into something uncertain. Melissa looked away. Ryan stared at the floor. Harold exhaled slowly, not in triumph, but in clarity. For the first time in years, the house felt like it belonged to him again. Not as property, but as a decision.